Good morning, I'm Councillor Nikki Brennan and I will be chairing this meeting of the Subcommittee C of Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can I ask you all please to mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality whilst I outline the procedure. And can I also ask you to please turn off your cameras with the exception of the committee members unless you are the person speaking. This is to reduce bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. Could everyone attending today's meeting please make sure that their mobile phone is on silent and ensure they are situated in a room or environment which is free from distractions or unnecessary noise. Thank you for that. I am speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It is vitally important for what I hope are obvious reasons that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me, members of the subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulations for these type of meetings. Just to let everybody know that this is a public meeting and it will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast on the Council's internet site, and that members of the press and public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Members are reminded that they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in today's minutes. We've had no apologies submitted today, but can we note the public part of the minutes for the meetings held on the 26th of May 2021 and the 30th of June 2021?
Noted.
Can I welcome you to this hearing of a review application in respect of Ark Convenience Store, 85 Turfs Green, Norfield, Birmingham, B31 4AH. I will begin with some introductions. As stated previously, I am Councillor Nikki Brennan and I am chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillor Mary Locke and Councillor Neil Eustace.
Morning, Chair.
Morning, Councillor Locke. Also present in this meeting are the following officers. Licensing Officer Shayed Yasser.
Morning, Chair.
Committee Manager Katie Townshend.
Good morning, Chair.
And Committee Lawyer Joanne Champali.
Good morning, Chair.
Could I ask all parties to identify themselves, please? Firstly, starting from the applicant, which is Trading Standards.
Good morning, Chair. Martin Williams from Trading Standards.
Next, the licence holder and representatives. Mr. Ark, Chris Hopkins.
Well, good morning, members of the committee. I'm Chris Hopkins and I'm counsel for the licence holder this morning. Mr. Ark, can you identify yourself to the committee, please?
Hello.
Mr. Baring, can you identify yourself as well, please?
Yes, Mr. Yes, yeah, Mr. Ark. So it's Mr. Baring here, Mr. Amrit Singh Ark, Mr. Ark, and Mr. Gill, the interpreter.
Thank you very much. And next, those making representations, West Midlands Police.
Yes, morning, Chair. Mark Swallow from West Midlands Police.
Could I ask if any persons making representations wishes to withdraw their representations at this stage of the hearing? Thank you. Nobody wishes to withdraw. I will assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee procedural rules sent out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online. but I wish to assure you all that such amendments will not impact on a party's right to a fair hearing. We will be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go to the chat. If you do not have access to the chat function for any reason, please use the raise your hand function to indicate you wish to speak. That button is usually fourth from the right on your toolbar. You can also, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you now all confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your own name? Now, officers can also type their job title. This meeting will not proceed until you have done so. Katie, just to confirm, am I waiting for anybody to type their name?
No, Chair, I think we have everyone.
Okay, please keep this chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat. If any participant has dialed in from an audio telephone rather than Microsoft Teams, please speak now to confirm you can be heard and hear. With the exception of the subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you are the person speaking. If there are any problems with bandwidth which cause difficulties with the sound, I may, in my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone being able to hear and be heard. Does anybody wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing speak in the chat function or using a raise a hand function now. Thank you for that. I will now outline the procedure that we'll be following at today's.
Sorry, Ma'am, it's Mr. Hopkins. I have just typed in the chat, but you may have missed it. There are two very quick points, if I can just raise at this stage, please.
Yes, of course.
The first is, I don't know if anybody else has had difficulties, but I haven't been able to access the licensing report. The link which was provided in the letter by the licensing team, unfortunately, when I try to access it through that, it says my access is denied. I don't know if that's an internal system that I haven't got access to, but I certainly haven't been given sight of that report, if there is one.
Katie, do we know anything about that link?
Chair, I believe licensing sent the link, so it might be worth asking Shahid if he knows anything about that.
Shahid?
Yeah, so the link is a public link. You should be able to access it. I've accessed it today as well. It's on the public domain, so anyone in the public can access it. So I presume it's an issue with the council's internal systems, I believe.
Would we be able to get a copy of the report sent over to Mr. Hopkins now?
Yeah, I can send that across if I can just confirm. Yeah, shall I send it to the to your email address now?
Yes, please, if you could. I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just waiting because Joanne is typing something into the chat function, so I'm just going to wait until she's finished. Mr. Hopkins, would you like a short adjournment to read the report?
Yes, please. I imagine the premises license holder hasn't read the report either. So if we could have, I imagine it would only take 10 minutes. These reports don't tend to be that long, Ma'am. If we could have that time, it would assist. Just also at this point, I understand that 2 statements were sent across last night. One statement is from the premises license holder, Mr. Surinder Ark, and the second is from his son, Mr. Amrit Ark. Can I ask if the committee has had sight of those documents, please?
Yes, we have. We all have.
I'm grateful. Well, in that case, Ma'am, if I could please have that time to just have a look at the licensing report, and then obviously I'll be able to assist the committee after that.
Okay, I will adjourn this meeting till 10:30
Thank you.
for you to be able to read the report. So can we stop the live stream until
Hello, sorry, we're having connection problems.
No problem. Mr. Hopkins, can I just check that you're happy now that you've seen sight of the report?
I am, thank you, Chair, and thank you to you and your colleagues for the time.
No problem. So now I will briefly outline the procedure which will be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer will present the report. Then the applicant will be asked to present their case, which we are asking if this can be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Then those making representations will be invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Then the licence holder or their representatives will be invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Can I ask that all parties speak as slowly and clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hand for the minutes, and the meeting is also being live streamed. If at any time it is somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage of the meeting, but will try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. When questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or those present, please signify this by using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you are viewing this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I do not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which questions will be dealt with. Additionally, you may also seek to notify a question or point verbally in the usual way at the appropriate point. So at any point in the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at the appropriate moment. If at any point you cannot hear or are having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they've just said. It is important that you use the chat function as soon as you are unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that the problem is caused by people still having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I'll remind everybody that please mute your microphone and turn off your cameras when you are not the person speaking. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice? At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in the meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then turn to the meeting and continue. Please note that if any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress that no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard. At the decision-making stage, the members and relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event the members need to clarify any point, you will be notified by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision, and notification of determination of the application will be sent to all parties within 5 days. So I hope that is reasonably straightforward. And so with that, can I ask the licensing officer to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The Chief Inspector of Weights and Measures applied on the 3rd of June 2021 for a review of a premises licence under Section 51 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Ark Convenience Store, 85 Turks Green, Northfield, Birmingham, B31 4AH. The purpose of the report before you today is to consider this application for a review of a premises licence. Representations have been received from West Midlands Police as a responsible authorities, and these are attached to Appendix 1 of your report. The review application itself is attached to Appendix 2. The site location plans are attached to Appendix 4, and there's apologies, there's a premises licenses attached to Appendix 3. Site location plans are attached to Appendix 4. Now, when carrying out its licensing function, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The options which are available to you today are modify the conditions of the license, exclude a licensable activity from the scope of the license, to remove the designated premises supervisor, to suspend the license for a period not exceeding 3 months, to revoke the license, or to take no action at all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I now ask the applicant to make their representation?
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. I think we've just lost Councillor Eustace.
Okay, I can wait for him to see if he comes back. There we go, he's back. Okay, so I will ask the applicant now to make their presentation, please. So, trading standards.
Good morning, Chair and everyone. Martin Williams here from Birmingham Trading Standards. So, on the 19th of February 2021, there is a typo in the report which says 2020. It doesn't take us 12 months to follow up a complaint. Trading Standards received notification from West Midlands Police that they had received a Crime Stoppers complaint saying that our convenience store, 85 Turbs Green, was selling Krakow vodka. Now, they put in their form that it was unfit for human consumption as it contains high levels of industrial alcohol. This is because police officers in the north of England found some Krakow vodka, which was unfit for human consumption, had high levels of industrial alcohol. And I think what happened was that triggered the police in the West Midlands is Crime Stoppers complaint. So on the 24th of February 2021, Trading Standards and environmental health officers went to our convenience store to follow up the matter. The man serving at the till, Mr. Ranjit Singh Sandhu, was explained why we'd come there and what we needed to do, particularly to
Chair,
check.
sorry to interrupt.
I think we've lost Councillor Eustace again.
Yeah, we have.
If I can just get you to pause your presentation just for a minute.
Sorry.
And he's back in the meeting again now, I think. Councillor Eustace, I can't see you, but can you just confirm you're here and you can hear us? There we go.
Chair,
Yes, Katie.
it might be worth trying to turn all the cameras off. Just it might
Okay,
improve the connection. So if we could try
Okay,
that.
Try that. Okay, if we all turn our cameras off.
Committee members too, Chair.
See you.
Yes, please.
Shall I do mine as well, Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going on. It's going off altogether. Anyway,
Chair, there's al-
Would it be better if you went out and joined again?
I think he's left again. Councillor Eustace, we're turning our cameras off to see if it helps with the bandwidth.
Okay, shall I carry on from where I finished off? If we're all
Yes,
together.
you can carry on now, Martin.
Okay. I'm looking at the screen.
Chair, I apologise, and sorry, Mr. Williams. Also, it's Mr. Hopkins. Can I just ensure, please, that Mr. Baring and the licence holder are now able to participate in proceedings? I've seen that they did enter an entry in the chat to say they were having difficulties hearing the evidence.
Hello, the feed is very disruptive on our side. When it's very broken and we can't hear where we hear someone for a couple of seconds, then it breaks for about 5 seconds, and we hear someone for another couple of seconds.
Is it better now that the cameras are off?
Can we? We'll try it for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we can.
But
yeah.
we certainly didn't hear Mr. Williams, and we certainly, when obviously there was housekeeping, we didn't hear that as well.
Mr. Williams, would you like to start from the beginning of your presentation?
I'll start from the top. I didn't get very far, so that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. On 19 Feb 2021, Trading Standards received a notification from West Midlands Police concerning Krakow vodka that they'd had intelligence about, that was seen on sale in our convenience store, 85 Turves Green, Northfield, Birmingham. On the 24th of February 2021, Trading Standards and environmental health officers went to ARC stores to follow up the matter. The officers told the man serving behind the till, and Mr. Ranjit Singh Sandhu, the reason why they were there, and said they'd need to check the stock, particularly for any Krakow. Officers found 3 bottles of Krakow vodka with a handwritten price of £10.99 on the sales shelf display, just behind head height, just behind the counter. And I said I need to take it away for further examination. While in the shop, I also checked other products and noticed some very good special offers on a particular brand of wine on display at the front shelf of the shop. I had with me a list of counterfeit codes for this particular brand of wine, and then proceeded to check the lot codes on this brand of wine in several different places in the shop. We found 16 counterfeit bottles on 3 different shelves in the shop. There were further 22 bottles in boxes above the fridge display at the rear of the shop, facing you as you walk in, and a further 31 counterfeit bottles in the storeroom just at the back of the shop. In total on that day, we found 69 bottles of counterfeit wine of a particular brand, and there were various varieties, a Merlot variety, Shiraz variety, Chardonnay, excuse me, to mention 3. Told Mr. Sandhu that we'd need to take these away for further examination and checking, and I gave him a receipt and gave him a page, once he'd signed it, of our search book property record. On the 2nd of March 2021, it was confirmed by that particular wine brand holder that all of those 69 bottles seized from ARC store were in fact counterfeit. One of the bottles of Krakow vodka, I'm just noticing somebody wants an adjournment in the chat.
Are you still unable to hear?
Yes, sorry, Chair. It's still very broken. The evidence is. I was wondering if we can have a 5-minute adjournment. I do apologise, just so we can reset our internet and modem, just in case it is a fault on our side.
It's frustrating because we can hear you really clearly.
I do apologise.
What we'll allow you to do is I'll just ask everyone to turn their microphones onto mute, and I'll ask that you leave the meeting and rejoin.
That would be okay. That's not a problem. But if Mr. Williams is going to be
He won't
continuing,
be continuing whilst you're rejoining the meeting.
fine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can I just ask that the live stream is paused, please? Thank you. Mr. Williams, would you like to take your presentation from the start, if that's okay?
What, from the beginning?
If that's okay with you.
Okay.
Just to make sure we're 100% sure everyone can hear.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
What I suggest, if anybody can't hear me, maybe shout straight away. So, okay, on 19th February 2021, Trading Standards received a notification from West Midlands Police that they'd received a Crime Stoppers complaint saying that our convenience store, 85 Turves Green, Northfield, was selling Krakow vodka, in their words, which was unfit for human consumption as it contained industrial alcohol. On the 24th of February 2021, following this up, Trading Standards and Environmental Health officers went to ARC convenience store to check out the complaint. The officers found a man standing behind the till, a Mr. Ranjit Singh Sandhu. We explained why we were there and said we'd need to check the stock, particularly for Krakow vodka. We found 3 bottles of Krakow vodka with a handwritten price of $10.99 on the sales shelf, about head height behind the, actually behind where the gentleman was standing. And I said we needed to take those away for further examination. While I was in the shop, I'd also decided to check other products and noticed some special offers on a particular brand of wine, which I was aware that have been issues with counterfeit ones around that time. I had some information with me of counterfeit lot codes, so I began to check the bottles on display against the lot codes for counterfeit ones that I had with me. So we found 16 bottles of counterfeit wine on 3 different display shelves in the shop. There were further 22 bottles in boxes stored above the fridge display at the back of the shop, in the shop premises, but just above the if you like, the fridge cooler, and a further 31 bottles in the storeroom at the back of the shop. In total, there were 69 bottles of counterfeit bottles of this particular brand of wine, several different varieties, including Merlot, Shiraz, Chardonnay, to name a few. We advised Mr. Sandhu that any suspect bottles we would need to remove for further examination, and we gave him what we call a search book list of seized items, which we showed him in the book where they were listed, and he signed and was given a copy. On the 2nd of March 2021, it was confirmed by that brand holder that all those 69 bottles were in fact counterfeit. One of the bottles of the Krakow vodka was sent to the public analyst for testing. A lab report was sent back in March 2021 detailing that sample of Krakow didn't contain any harmful material. However, HMRC have now confirmed that no duty had been paid on the product. On the 24th of March 2021, we received a new complaint from a member of the public who'd purchased wine of a different make, he said, from our convenience store the previous weekend. Part of what he said was, it was a brand I bought and had drunk before. However, it was clearly fake. It was unpalatable. After checking lot codes of counterfeit product of this particular brand with the manufacturer, we went back to ARC stores on the 29th of March 2021 to follow up this new complaint. What we found was 7 bottles with the same counterfeit lot code as we'd been told by the brand holder was counterfeit and concurred with the lot code the complainant had, and we seized and detained those. Samples were sent to this second manufacturer for testing on 14th of April 2021. Finally, they confirmed to me that those 7 bottles were also a counterfeit product of wine as well. And this was the same variety and lot code from the complainant's bottle. So those are briefly the facts. Just very briefly, background to that. 69 bottles of various varieties of counterfeit wine were seized. The first occasion, 3 bottles of illicit vodka, a further 7 in March. But clearly it's not possible for me to gauge how many counterfeit products the shop had and sold before that. And clearly, I just had a snapshot on those 2 days what was in the shop, so I've no idea. And up until last night, I clearly have had no explanation at all from anyone in the shop as to what may or may not have happened. Now, joint working with various other organisations is trying to stem the flow of illicit alcohol, wine and vodka in particular, and as in this case, it would appear that large-scale operations are afoot, probably originating abroad, using organised crime gangs in the UK to distribute and sell the product at retail level. While this sample of, excuse me, I'm fighting a tickly throat. While this sample of Krakow was not found to contain harmful alcohol on this occasion, Revenue and Customs have confirmed that it was illicit product with no duty paid. Now, we are aware of several different varieties of illicit Krakow vodka on sale across the country, and it's likely that the Crime Stoppers intel came to the police because, as I say, there was an issue in Lincolnshire earlier in February where 5 bottles of Krakow, which did contain harmful alcohol, was seized by licensing police there. Trading Standards has been working with Revenue and Customs, Food Standards Agency, and other organisations, including Environmental Health, to stem the flow of counterfeit alcohol, which is, I have to say, has increased particularly during the lockdown period. The FSA have been involved in testing this wine, and they've tested many different varieties from different outlets. And the conclusion is, although the traceability of the subject is unclear, there are currently no specific health concerns about the consumption of the product. In other words, it's not an unsafe wine. What it appears to be is a cheap brand of wine substituted and then made to look like a more expensive product. Now, there are no previous history of complaints from ARC stores before these 2 incidents in 2021. But what I do want to say is counterfeit alcohol is almost worse than non-duty alcohol because it's specifically manufactured to look like genuine brands and mislead customers into making purchases what would appear to be genuine products. In this case, the product isn't harmful. And in many ways, the reason for that is the longer it's easy to prolong a scam if things don't become alerted sooner. In other words, if there is a harmful product inside. We do have complaints, and we've had many complaints about substandard wine, as I say, over the lockdown period. And the problem is, until people complain, we have no idea how long these issues have gone on for, and we've no idea how many bottles ARC stores bought. They haven't told me that. No idea how long it went for, how many deliveries of this they may or may not have had. And I say, until late last night when they sent the explanation, that's all I've had from them. What I want to say briefly at the end is, firstly, the licenses are the name of Mr. Surinder Singh. It appears it's Mr. Surinder Singh ARC. I don't know if licensing are able to confirm that at some stage. It appears to be the same gentleman. I do have confirmation documents from the 2 wine brand holders and from Revenue and Customs to confirm what I've said about the counterfeit product. I have those because of ongoing possible criminal investigations and confidentially issues. I haven't actually put those as part of my presentation because at the moment they're confidential. I don't want them going out into to the general public. And I think that's as much as I probably have to say at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'm just going to open it up to questions from members of the committee. Councillor Locke, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think so, no, thank you.
Councillor Eustace, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Chair,
I've got a question.
Sorry, I apologise.
Councillor, Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Have you, as you said in your presentation, you've seen the supporting documents that have come through?
Yes. Yeah.
having seen those documents, what would you like to happen to the licence now? What would trading standards want to happen with that licence?
In fairness, I would say I'd invite the committee to consider all available options to them.
Okay.
I presented my evidence. I'd let that be a matter for you.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to representations from West Midlands Police.
Sorry, Chair, it's Mr. Hopkins. Could I ask one question, Mr. Williams? It won't be by way of cross-examination.
You'll have to wait till your time in the for your presentation, and then it can be addressed in the closing remarks.
Understood, Chair.
Thank you. We'll just move over to West Midlands Police.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Thank you very much. West Midlands Police would like to support the representations made by Birmingham Trading Standards regarding Ark Convenience Store, 85 Turves Green, Northfield in Birmingham, licence number 548. Representation is supported under the Prevention of Crime and Disorder and the Public Safety Licensing Objectives. Evidence by Trading Standards clearly shows that these premises are supplying counterfeit wine and vodka, selling it to the public and passing it off as a legitimate product. So this all started on 19th of February this year, with information coming into Crime Stoppers that Ark Convenience Store was selling crack-off vodka that was unfit for human consumption. This resulted on the 24th of February in Trading Standards officers and environmental health officers visiting the premises. There they met Mr. Ranjit Singh Sandhu, and they found 3 bottles of Krakow vodka as per the information that was received on Crime Stoppers. These bottles were seized and and 1 bottle was sent off for analysis. On further examination of the premises, they found bottles of wine, a particular wine, 16 bottles on 3 different display shelves in the shop, a further 22 bottles in boxes above the fridge at the rear of the shop, and a further 31 counterfeit bottles in the storeroom at the back of the premises. So that 5 locations within the shop that these bottles of counterfeit wine were discovered. So in total, there was 69 bottles of counterfeit wine that were found, and they had 7 different fake lock codes and included various different flavours of wine. All the bottles were seized, and 1 of the bottles of Krakow vodka was sent to the public analysts for testing. As you've heard, when that report came back, it said the vodka didn't contain any material that was harmful for human consumption. However, no duty had been paid on the products. So on the 24th of March, Trading Standards received a completely separate complaint from a member of the public who purchased a bottle of wine of a different make from the Ark Convenience Store the previous weekend. It said that it was a brand he'd had previously and knew that it wasn't the real thing. So after checking the lock codes and confirming again that that was counterfeit, Trading Standards returned to Ark Convenience Store on the 29th of March. They found and seized 7 bottles of that wine with the fake lock code that was displayed on the shelves. So in all, 76 bottles of wine and 3 bottles of vodka were seized. Obviously, this could be said to be a victimless crime. However, there are a number of victims involved in this sort of counterfeiting. Firstly, there's the customer who purchases the wine, who believes, or the vodka, believing them to be a genuine product. They then have that and get an inferior product. The store didn't know at the time of selling items or putting them on display for sale whether those contained harmful materials that could have made people ill, or at worst, could have killed people. That's the first set of victims. The second set of victims are the brand holders, Krakow for vodka and the two wine companies. They have products sold in their name that aren't theirs, that as they're inferior, may mean that people don't buy their product. That then spreads because people tell other people that that's not a very good wine to have, and so that affects their sales. The third set of victims are the public. Because no duty or tax is paid in relation to these purchases, that means that deprives the public exchequer of funding. That funding provides really important public services. One obviously being the National Health Service, who have to treat people. This stops the amount of money going into there that should be, and makes us all as a community poorer. This could be said to be counterfeiting on an industrial scale. It's 76 bottles of wine. It isn't one or two. So that's what we know of. There may have been others because we don't know what was sold. I have seen the statements of the premises licence holder and his son, and I'd first like to extend my condolences regarding the COVID situation with his parents. I'm really sorry to hear that, and I hope they have recovered. The purchase of the vodka by the son, he says that the rules were that only his father made purchases, yet on this occasion he still chose to purchase quite a number of bottles of wine, not one or two to try out, but quite a number. No explanation has been given in relation to how the vodka came to be in the possession of the shop. Obviously, the father has said that he has now changed the procedures. I would say that this has occurred on at least two occasions where different sorts of products have been purchased, and an inadequate explanation has been given as to how this happened. And I would invite the committee to consider revocation of the premises licence, as West Midlands Police now have no confidence in the management of the premises. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to open now to questions from members. So I'm going to ask Councillor Locke, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Eustace, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
And I don't have any questions either. So now we will move on to the licence holders and their representatives to now make their case. So Mr Hopkins.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. If I can start by just saying that it's unknown to the licence holder at this stage on exactly what basis the wine brand holder was able to confirm to trading standards on the 2nd of March that all 69 bottles of wine seized at the store on the 24th of February were indeed counterfeit. We really are a bit thin on details regarding that, although I appreciate what Mr Williams has said this morning about the fact that he took his own codes on the visit on the 24th of February. Moving away from that point, though, if I can, members of the committee, clearly you have the detailed statements from both Mr Surinder Singh Ark, the premises licence holder, and also from his son as well. By way of summary of those statements, you'll have seen there that Mr Surinder Ark has held his premises and personal licences for the last 9 years. His premises licence has never been called in for review by Birmingham City Council before. In fact, more than that, he's not aware of any regulatory action being taken against his licence during that 9-year period prior to today. He owns the store, which operates as a convenience store selling alcohol, cigarettes and groceries. It's a long-established business. As well as himself, he employs one full-time member of staff. I understand that's actually his brother, and also one part-time member of staff. His son, Amrit, does not normally work within the store. I'll come back to the reasons for why he was working in the store shortly. Mr. Surinder Singh Ark does a stock check normally every 2 months, and he does this prior to doing a bulk shop at the cash and carry, and that's where he purchases the vast majority of merchandise and stock for the shop. In terms of alcohol, he buys all of his alcohol either from the cash and carry or directly from trusted suppliers, and he keeps receipts for doing so. He sees the buying of stock as being his responsibility alone as the licence holder, and you'll have seen within his statement that he says there that he would never buy from a representative who was not from a recognised wholesaler or supplier. Nobody else within the organisation is authorised to purchase alcohol for the store, and you'll have seen, members of the committee, that he has since reinforced that rule in a discussion with his members of staff. You'll also have seen from his statement that on the 23rd of February of this year, he had to fly out to India at short notice in order to care for his parents who lived there and had unfortunately fallen ill with COVID. Before flying out, he asked his son Amrit to help out in the shop in his absence. As I say, this is not a normal course of events that Amrit would work in the shop. This is something which had to be done at short notice given the circumstances. In terms of the detail regarding the purchase of the wine stock itself, you have, of course, starting at paragraph 9 of Amrit Singh Ark's statement, his explanation for what happened, and I will go through that if I may. He says, starting at paragraph 9, on the same day that my dad flew out, a representative visited the shop. I have seen representatives come to the shop before, marketing new lines of stock and offering special discounted stock, and this gentleman was the same. Although I cannot now recall who he said he worked for, I do recall him explaining to me that his company had preferential relationships with wholesalers and manufacturers, and as a result of this, they get stock cheaper than what is available at the cash and carries. He was selling wines, beers and spirits. The gentleman was well dressed in a shirt and tie and also showed me his business ID card. He spoke to me for some time, showing me a price list on his iPad. During his time at the shop, he received numerous calls from what I understood were his customers. He was taking orders and generally talking about stock availability. I also saw him make calls to his head office to get updates on stock and arrange deliveries for his customers, which made me believe more so that he was a legitimate representative. It was at this stage that I asked him what his best sellers were, and he pointed out some wines on his price list, and I ordered a selection of wines from him. In total, the order was for around £275, and he asked me to complete and sign an order form in which he took the shop's details and my email address so that an invoice could be emailed to me from his head office. He then went to his van and unloaded the goods into his shop. Once the goods were unloaded, I paid him the monies during cash and he left the shop. I then priced up and placed some of the stock on the shelves, with the remainder being placed in the back. At no point did I think he was not a legitimate representative. Coming away from Amrit's statement then, members of the committee, Mr Singh Senior returned from India on the 15th of March of this year, and he immediately went into 10 days compulsory isolation at his home address, which I understand is about 20 minutes away from the shop. Clearly, during that period, he was unable to visit the shop for any reason. His intention upon his return from India was always to do a stock check once he had come out of self-isolation. He was planning to do this in the first week of April, and in fact, that's exactly what he did. Albeit, of course, that was events overtook, and the second visit by trading standards took place before he was able to undertake that stock check. It was only after the second visit by trading standards that Amrit came clean to his father effectively and told his father about the stock that he had purchased for the store. Members of the committee, clearly the licence holder fully accepts that the products found by trading standards should not have been on display or stored at the shop. As you'll have seen from Mr Surinder Singh Ark's statement, he has taken steps to ensure it won't happen again. And of course, the point being is that prior to February of this year, there'd never been any such concerns raised with the store in the past. In terms of the vodka, obviously you've heard what I've said about the fact that Mr. Surinder Singh Ark, the licence holder, takes responsibility for buying all alcohol for the store. You'll have seen what he said within his statement, that the vodka may well have been on the shelves for quite a considerable period of time. I have asked if he may have an invoice or receipt for when the vodka was purchased, but given the passage of time, he's been unable to find a receipt for that. Can I assist, or can the licence holder assist the panel with any questions?
Thank you very much. Councillor Locke, do you have any questions?
I've got one. Was anyone else in the shop when the salesman came? I don't know whether this is the right time or you know, who witnessed the salesman, or in his selling the products.
Yes, I think it's certainly the right time, Councillor. Perhaps if I could ask Mr. Baring to invite Mr. Amrit Singh just to answer your question, because he was the only one present.
Yeah, Chair, I've unmuted the call. I won't switch my video on due to the internet, if that's acceptable. And Amrit, if you can.
So no. No one else is no, just me.
Did you hear the answer?
Yes, I did. Thank you for that. And also, did Mr. Singh Senior? I know he had to go away, at short notice. Was there plenty of stock in the shop before he went away, or not?
Yes. ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ ਥੋੜਾ ਹੀ ਸੀਗਾ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਨੋਰਮਲੀ ਮੈਂ ਪੀਕ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਕਰੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਉਹ ਇਹਦੀ ਐਮਰਜੈਂਸੀ ਜਾਣਾ ਪਿਆ ਤੇ ਸਟਾਕ ਨਾ ਪੇ ਸੀਗਾ sorry, Mr. Gill interpreting for Mr. Ark. Good morning. Mr. Ark said that there was appropriate normal stock. He hadn't overstocked because obviously this emergency came along last minute. So in particular, he wouldn't have said that the store was overstocked at that particular time. No.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I have no more questions, Chair.
Councillor Eustace, do you have any questions?
No questions, Chair.
I have one question regarding the vodka. Just to confirm, there's no explanation of how that vodka got into the shop. No memory of it at all.
ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਰਕਰ ਸੀਗਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਚੇਤਾ ਉਹ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਦਾ ਜਾਂ Sorry, the vodka, he said probably was been there about 5 or 6 years. It was Polish vodka. They'd reduced the price to get rid of it because it had been lying about for a number of years.
Do you know what price was on it before it was reduced?
Key price bottled it. Bella to reduce that. Bella reduce Bella. Yeah, can you Bella de 14.99. Yeah, the 14.99.
Thank you. I have no further questions. So now we're going to move on to closing submissions, and I will firstly go to West Midlands Police.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you perfectly.
Lovely, thank you very much. My closing submissions are that, yes, information was supplied by Crime Stoppers and also a member of the public. Those two pieces of information, when followed up, were found to be completely correct. It's been said that there's been no issues previously with the premises. That is true, but that's because the premises have never been visited previously. So there's never been information to conduct visits before. So on the 2 occasions when visits have been made, issues have been identified. You could say that this was an offer from the account that was too good to be true. When making a purchase of stock for the premises, it would be usual for the premises licence holder to do that. He has said that other people don't make those purchases. Yes, on this occasion, his son did. He said he's seen identification, but we have no name of the person doing the selling. There's no billing to support the purchase, and we haven't even been given a full list of the stock that was bought on that occasion. There's no adequate explanation being given as to how the vodka came to be in the shop. I said before, this isn't a victimless crime. There are 3 sets of victims here: the public, the purchasers, and the manufacturers. All these people lose out because of actions like this. That is unacceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the applicant for their closing submissions, which is Trading Standards.
Hello, Chair. Yeah, I understand that no invoice was provided for the product, but nobody's produced a delivery note. Now, a delivery note would have been provided at the time the alcohol was delivered, and I don't understand why nobody's produced that. Which leads me to think there's some reason why they're keeping that a little bit of a secret. Also, in the submission of the statement from Amrit, he reckons at one stage he went and checked in the shop for all the stuff he bought from this seller. So he clearly knew or knows how much he bought, but nobody's telling us exactly what product it was, or how many times, or indeed where it was stocked. The other issue is as well, I think the Krakow, we're always finding where the counterfeit wine is. The Krakow has only appeared in the last 12 months. And what we're finding is when we're finding counterfeit wine of particular brands like this, we're finding Krakow vodka as well. That's why when I went in with the Krakow, I looked for the vodka. Sorry, I looked for the wine. If I get a complaint about this brand of wine, I look for Krakow. So to say that a Krakow is 5 or 6 years old cannot be true. Is that because they have no idea about the stock taking in their shop, or it's just a convenience story that it's old stock? I don't believe that at all. And finally, the comment that Chris Hopkins made, that Mr. Ark hasn't seen a statement from the wine brand holder. Yes, he has. It was sent to him via his legal team on the 22nd of July of last week. I have copies of them here. I just don't want to produce them in a public forum at present. Any questions at all?
We don't take questions on the closing submission, Mr. Williams.
Okay. No problem.
But if that's the end of your submission, we will now ask the licence holder and their representatives to make a closing submission.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Just to address one point that I think was made by West Midlands Police, that the store has never been visited before. Mr. Ark's recollection is that he was visited by Trading Standards about 5 years ago, and on that occasion no further action was taken against his licence. There was nothing found which would justify that, no doubt. In terms of what we've heard today, well, members of the committee, in my submission, little if no weight can be applied to the anonymous Crime Stoppers report, since this has since been proven not to have been accurate. Of course, the report was concerning vodka, which was unfit for human consumption. Trading Standards have had the vodka tested, and of course, that very much was not the case, and it carried no health concerns with it. I also invite the committee not to engage in speculation that there could have been more counterfeit bottles at the store. And I say that because if that was truly the case, then no doubt Trading Standards, West Midlands Police would have been under a duty to have gone back to the store and to have searched for more counterfeit bottles, etc., because that would, of course, be the proceeds of crime. Now, for whatever reason, they've chosen not to do that. And in those circumstances, I invite you to find it would be wrong in these proceedings to engage in speculation, which may result in you reaching a finding that there were many more counterfeit bottles on the shelves than those which were found. In terms of outcome then from today, well, members of the committee, it's very much the case that although this is a convenience store which also sells groceries, etc., the loss of the premises licence will result in the closure of the store. The sales of alcohol are a generator of key income for the store, without which, as I understand it, the future of the store would be unsustainable. The closure of the store would result in the loss of 2 full-time jobs, that being both the Mr. Surinder Singh Ark and also his full-time employee, and also in the loss of a part-time job, that being the part-time member of staff. The committee should, in my submission, follow the guidance under section 182 of the Licensing Act, which is issued by the Home Office, and start with the least severe option which is available to you today. And specifically, of course, any regulatory action which you take against a licence today, it must be both appropriate and proportionate in the circumstances. Now, clearly, given the evidence that we've heard, the committee may well consider a starting point to be a modifying of the conditions of the licence for the store. The committee could impose a further condition, either on a temporary or permanent basis, that stock checks are to be carried out at an agreed period, and a copy of the written record is to be provided to the licensing team, along with any receipts for new purchases of alcohol also. The benefit of that, members of the committee, in my submission, would be that that would give a check and balance for the licensing team, that what Mr. Surinder Singh Ark has said, that there will be no repeat going forward, will in truth be the case also. It will give that level of oversight and that level of reassurance to the licensing team. If the committee does not feel that it would be appropriate to modify the conditions, then of course one of the other options available to you is to suspend the licence for a period of time. If the committee feel that that is appropriate, then I invite you to do so for the shortest period that you feel is possible, bearing in mind, of course, that any action against a licence must be proportionate in the circumstances. Members of the committee, you've heard what I've said about what the result for this store would be of a revocation of the licence. And in those circumstances, I invite you to step back from revoking the licence, to bear in mind the fact that this is the first time that this store has come before the licensing committee for review. It's been operating for some 9 years, seemingly without issues being raised. And in those circumstances, I invite the committee to find that revoking the licence would neither be appropriate nor proportionate in the circumstances. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into the private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You will be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Thank you for everybody's time this morning. Could I ask that the live stream is now stopped?